what's going on already and all the beautiful people in the world? My name is Ike Isaacs, and I'm depressed. And I'm today joined by Salsa Shark, who is also depressed.
Man, gotta love that seasonal depression.
If by seasonal you mean 24/7, 365 days a year of unrelenting pain and torture, then yeah, I have same, bro.
I mean, to be fair, it's not quite like normal depression. Just imagine depression, but with snow.
Imagine depression, but with twinkly lights. Oh Lord. So, other than me and Salsa both being clinically depressed, um, Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays. Whatever you guys celebrate out there. Hope you guys are having fun and staying safe. Me and Salsa, we were gonna actually meet up for Christmas. We were gonna meet halfway between our respective areas, and it didn't end up happening. But yeah, it happens. It happens. But one good thing that's happened is the stimulus bill got passed. We get $600. What you think about that, Salsa?
Oh, I've got some big words about that.
I am
It.
about to speak bigly about this.
All right, no cap. I'll admit 600 is better than nothing, but it's literally 3 days till Christmas. This should have happened months ago, and $600. That's like 12 days of rent for me.
Yeah, I
I
was
don't
gonna say.
I don't think it's going to help that many people, but it's better than nothing. So,
Yeah. I was gonna say I was like, let me look up here what the 1 second here.
you know, trying to
Yeah.
find a good way to spin this where it's still entertaining and not just absolutely depressing to think about. Put
So
on me up. No,
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 I was
you're gonna say?
I was gonna say the average rent per month in the United States is $784.
Okay, that's bullshit.
Well, this is for all rent types. This isn't just
So
for
that also counts like rural Virginia, where people are living below poverty line and rents like a sack of wheat.
Well, this is like all across the United States, all demographics, the overall average cost of rent for everybody. Like, and this is obviously averages aren't always accurate because you know you have a hand. If you have enough on the lowest end of the spectrum, is going to offset that. And this is also probably taken in consideration, like people who get assistance from the government as well, which may skew the numbers as well. But regardless, about $800 a month in rent is about average, and the $600 won't even cover. Will cover a little over about 3/5 of a month of rent. So,
Ooh,
yay for
that's a
that!
number we don't like saying.
Oh yeah, the 3/5 compromise.
Man, the government's really bringing back the oldies, huh? The great
Apparently,
the 3/5. Ooh.
Mitch McConnell's about to name a law after himself called the McConnell Law.
I'm Mitch McConnell. Feed me poor people.
Apparently, dude. Oh man. Oh,
Uh, so
it's
yeah,
funny. It's funny and depressing. I know
you
some
gotta laugh through the pain.
you gotta laugh through the starvation.
Don't laugh too hard though, or you'll burn calories you shouldn't be burning.
Oh, that's what I was gonna say. I was like, just make sure you're not laughing too much. You might burn too many calories, guys.
Gotta save that energy for the revolution.
What is it that Keanu says in the whatever the fuck that new game is?
Wake the fuck up, samurai. We've got a city to burn.
Yeah, that's right. Oh man. Well,
Oh man, I
we'll get
like
to go ahead.
can technically say that the game came out, then they took it back, and it's being delayed again.
Yeah, right.
I
Well,
love the memes, like the one that's just that picture of the kid with his hand out that said, "We changed our minds. We're delaying it again. Give it back."
For real though, I mean, it's accurate. Uh, but before we get into that, because we should talk about that. Speaking of, that's definitely something we're talking about. I want to mention the whole. There's still no consoles on the shelves for the next gen, right? Everybody's still out of PlayStation 4s indefinitely, probably.
Yeah, it's kind of sucks, man, you know? Not that, people could afford it anyway, being destitute and only being given $600 for the next 12 months.
Although, to be fair, I will say Joe Biden mentioned something about something to the effect of, this is basically he called it a down payment on a stimulus package that he wants to try and push through once he's in office. So,
What I don't get is we're surrounded by countries who have done it right. Canada
yeah.
was giving their people like $2,000 a month. We could afford to do it if, I don't know, we weren't funneling like, how much are we funneling into the military every year? A couple hundred
Um.
billion?
Oh, more than that. I think it's like $10 trillion.
I'm gonna have to Google this. No. USA military budget. Hell yeah, motherfucker.
So the
Ah,
total military spending amounted to about $850 billion. My bad.
so $850 billion. Great numbers. I love the fact that we have that money. On the other hand, ugh, do we really need that much money towards, I don't know, fighter jets that we don't really use outside of training exercises and, dick contests with Russia?
Yeah, I was gonna say. I mean, we're in peacetime right now, or as close to peacetime as we can get in the modern.
Well, peacetime if you forget about, the Middle East. But yeah, otherwise
Well,
peaceful.
well, we're not like in active conflict with the Middle East.
True, it's more just we go there, fuck shit up, and steal oil.
I mean, yeah, essentially.
Can't really call it conflict if it's more of a one-sided thing.
I was gonna say, can you really call it a conflict if there's if it's a one sided like fuck fest? Like seriously.
It's like, oh no, they shot at a couple of our soldiers. Whoopsie, I just drone striked a wedding in Yemen.
Oh God, that's so morbid, but it's true.
Ah, gotta love America.
I disrupted Moab. Sorry.
Whoops. 21.
Tactical nuke incoming.
Uh, it, it, it's amazing we live in such a strong country that can just, blow small countries off the map with, but we can't even afford to keep our people alive.
I was going to say that I was going to make the firepower to essentially we can basically wipe Japan off the map. If we if we had Pearl Harbor Part Two, Electric Boogaloo, like we would like, and it's like we have all of that, but even pay our
All
people.
right, real quick. You
I have
good
my
there,
headphones in,
Ike?
so I'm talking right into it.
Oh, that is weird. Must be the internet on your end or something.
Nah, I don't know about
Oh yeah, you're gonna test me, the dude with gigabyte download speeds? I am God here.
that. Probably.
I will be respected. You Gucci?
Sorry, 1 second. I am currently also working, so I have to have be responsible here.
Oh, the other fun part of all this lockdown, working at home and the long hours, being trapped inside of your house and your workspace, not being able to separate joy from sorrow, work from pleasure. Oh man, what a time to be alive.
It's certainly something.
So yeah, while you're doing that, I guess I'll just kind of talk about some more Christmassy stuff. Let's
Yes, please
see.
do.
It's really not much going on. Not many games coming out this time of year, even before the pandemic. But no consoles on shelves, which sucks because, all those poor kids and won't be getting their new PlayStation 5s for Christmas.
Well, I mean,
Other
if
than
they're
that,
poor, they can't afford it anyway. So I mean,
as I say, if their mommy was laid off because of the lockdown, ooh, tough luck, kiddo.
tough luck, kiddo. Better luck next year.
Let's see, what else is Christmassy?
Sorry about that. I had to finish what I was doing, but but no, yeah, but no, kind of to revisit something you just mentioned. I read something the other day that like with PlayStation's like continued issues with their number of consoles, like they're someone said that like they're trying to get more consoles pushed out by like the new year, but that they're anticipating like a exponential loss in sales.
Ooh, that's gonna be rough.
That's what I was gonna say, and I mean, and we even kind of talked about this the other day a little bit, but the cost to make these consoles, like these consoles for them to sell them at the price that they are with the interiors that they're selling them at, they're already kind of taking a loss on the consoles themselves in a way. So it's like if PlayStation won't be able to get like a significant number of consoles produced by the time the new year rolls around, they're going to look at an even more significant number of lots and lots.
Well,
Happens.
it is inevitable. I mean, they put out the consoles in the middle of a pandemic. People were already hurting for money, but I don't know. It Xbox
People were hurting
the
for money, but the people they still bought those fuckers. Let me tell you what.
God scalpers, man.
I know, right? It's seriously, scalpers are insane. That's
I'm
that's a whole
I,
nother thing that we talked about the last time too. I think too.
yeah, we probably talked about it a few times, so we probably shouldn't touch on that too much. But I will
But
say, what I don't know. I was gonna say something, but my brain, it's kind of like mush these days.
same. The closer I get to Christmas, like, cause like I get some time off of work for Christmas. After tomorrow, I have a half day tomorrow, so like I have a 4.5 day weekend, which originally was gonna be for me and Salsa. We are gonna meet up and we're gonna. I was gonna say next time when we do are able to meet up, we should try and do like an in person like podcast, like film it, and you don't have
Ooh, then
you
I'd
don't
have to be on camera. Hmm.
so you can what I was gonna say is that you can still you can keep your face covered. You can wear a mask or something.
Well, I'm not opposed to wearing a mask. I do like that idea.
So you could wear like a gas mask or some shit.
Bro, you need ideas for Christmas. Let's go on Buddy K. They have new gas masks I want.
I'm 100% sure that there are new guys.
In
Actually,
fact,
speaking of, go ahead.
I'm logging in right now. I want to see these gas masks again. I say right
You
now
bet.
I've only got somewhere I've got an Israeli civilian gas mask, and I've also got a Czechoslovakian one. But I saw somewhere on here they had a eat dicks, Bud K. I'm not signing up for email list again.
Eat dicks, Bud K.
I love to death, but come on, man.
Eat a
Guess
dick.
this would be under cool stuff. Their website's very weirdly laid out. It's hard telling where shit goes.
It should be labeled under back to school shopping. Oh wait, we're not in Yemen.
School essentials. Yo,
As
what the
a
fuck?
what?
Pyro mini fire shooter. Shoot fire from your wrist. USB rechargeable. It's literally a miniature flamethrower that you wear like a watch.
That's actually pretty badass.
I'm telling you, some of the stuff on here is just absurdly cool for the dumbest reasons. A fucking 3-in-1 HD tactical and automotive use endoscope. You can literally like SWAT team, SEAL Team 6 look under doors with that shit.
I was gonna make an inappropriate joke about somebody peeping in on their like their roommate or something.
Listen, man, what you do with it's your business. I just want to look up my own ass.
I want to look at my own asshole.
A 6-gallon cotton still with a thumper keg.
You said a cotton still?
Copper moonshine.
Oh,
I mean, technically, you could, just run water through it and produce, what do they call that? It's, there's a word for it. It's water that's been, like, not purified, but
filtered,
distilled.
Distilled, yeah.
I'd say you could do that, or for only $550, you can just straight up make your own moonshine. Can't sell it, that's illegal. But then again, who's to know?
Actually, speaking of moonshine, do you remember? Fuck, I can't remember the guy's name, but he would when we back in the old days when we used to when I used to live in Clifford, there was that guy who drove around as Santa Claus who would give people moonshine. Do you remember that?
Well, I do now. That's a memory I repressed.
I remember one of our mutual friends, Jay. He bought some that one time. It was like apple pie moonshine or some shit.
That is the most free ass thing. And we weren't even from the South.
No, we're from the Midwest at best.
At her. All right, so I'm looking at it right now. A couple things I want off this website. This mask MP5 with filter looks awesome. Ooh, how about this? Cold War era M deflector bullets. Polish MC1 gas mask. As a gift, it's only $30. Ooh, what's this? The German M9805 Butcher sawback bayonet with scabbard. That looks. I hope you're writing this stuff down. This is shit I want.
I mean, this is being recorded, so I have that. But, I'll make a list for you there, Chief.
A straight up German parachute. I mean, at this point, there's no reason not to be buying this shit.
You're gonna have all this shit, and like one day you're gonna be a news story. I just know it.
Well, that's not fair. What am I gonna do that's gonna get me on the news? I'm a little more quiet than that.
I'm pretty sure that you have made actual threats on this podcast to commit crimes. So.
Suggestions.
Actually, no. Speaking of, moving on from your weird Unabomber purchases, there was a so like the people that I work for. Typically at Christmas time, they like. Well, let me preface this by saying that they do something for like Thanksgiving and Christmas normally when we're in office, but obviously since the coronavirus, we've not been in office. So what they did like last year, for instance, is they gave us a gift card to Meijer, the grocery store, to buy some, stuff for Thanksgiving. Same thing for Christmas is that they would do something for us. I think like one year they did, every year they would do like a dinner. They would cater in like Texas Roadhouse and all that shit. But this year, since we weren't in office, they decided, you know what we're gonna do? We're just gonna send them something. And so they sent me a Yeti cup, which is nice, I suppose. Um, and with a $20 Target gift card in it. But
Hmm.
so I mean, obviously, I was hoping for something different, or maybe a little bit more. But I'm not gonna be that mad.
I was hoping for something cool, like, I don't know, they just send me a vial of live coronavirus.
uh, I don't want the coronavirus, and I don't know how they would obtain a vial of coronavirus, and I don't want to know how they could. But
I mean, it transmits through spit, so they just have a guy cough into a cup.
God, I mean, it's possible that they did that with my Yeti, I suppose.
I don't know, you won't know till you take a drink.
I do. I use it right now. Like I'm using it as we speak to take a drink of water.
Oh, you're gonna die.
They just had somebody who's got like completely like they just like coated the inside with like some like AIDS patient's blood or something.
Yo, speaking of radioactive shit,
Oh
I got
god.
my. I was at some store the other day that sells like bargain. I don't know, just weird shit. So I bought a couple cool flashlights because I have a weird thing about flashlights.
Right.
And one of the flashlights I bought is an ultraviolet.
Oh god.
Bro, for one, semen everywhere. Like you just looking at like, how did semen get on this wine bottle next to me? Who put that there? Who did this?
You did.
Well, I mean, moving on. Uh, so yeah, that's a thing. We should probably get back to something relevant, you know?
You're like, I need to quickly move on from the semen talk. Um, but no, actually, I was gonna say, we've talked a little bit about kind of like Christmas, and we talked a little bit about just some random shit.
Oh man, yeah, we talked a
Um,
little too much about Christmas.
hey, but as part of it, man, this is Christmas time. But I was gonna say, Cyberpunk 2077. Everybody, see, here's the thing. It came out. It was supposed to be like, hey, it's supposed to be kind of a big deal because it's supposed to be this really fun game and everything else. And it came out, and uh, two things I guess I would say that kind of happened is like like you're either the people who are playing it are like, yeah, this is pretty all right. It could be better, but it's all right. It was either that or it was this game is absolute dog shit. I'm going to literally kill myself.
I mean, it's literally the same thing that happened with No Man's Sky.
Yeah,
All the hype built up over the course of years of production. Promises were made that just weren't met because, time constraints.
yeah,
And when the hype is built up that much, there's nothing you can do. You just have to accept that no matter what, your product's going to fall short. So, at the same time, it's like, hey, y'all should have been a little more understanding and not press them to release it as quickly as they did. But at the same time, just make a working game and give yourself realistic expectations.
yeah. But you know how it is. I mean, they started the process. If I'm not mistaken, it's been 10 years in the making, but there was like a long period in between that time where they were working on something else. Um, but when they eventually got back to working on the game itself, they took their time, had a couple of delays. But I remember that people were getting so mad that like the producers and stuff like that were getting like death threats. So
Yeah,
they're
that
like,
sounds about right.
so they're like,
You good? Hello? Ah, I think Discord might be not working. Oh, there he goes. He left. And he's back.
Sorry, I accidentally hit Siri when I was talking.
Oh,
And so Siri just basically fucked me. But anyways, um, but no, all I was saying was is that they were. I feel like they were. The publishers were very much pressured, and obviously there's a lot of stuff that goes into like when and how they release the game because obviously it's not all dependent upon public perception. There are some internal things that they have to work with, like you know, basically, we have to work with our distributors, we have to work with our marketing team, we spent this much money on marketing, we spent this much money on, rush production. And so I'm sure that there were certain monetary constraints that they were also having to worry about, kind of pushed them to release it when they did. But honestly, if everybody had just been a little more cool about it, I feel like we wouldn't have gotten the shit game that we got.
it is what it is. At the end of the day, they'll probably do like No Man's Sky did. Over the course of the next couple years, they'll fix it up, keep selling it, and eventually it'll become a world famous, well made game. Who knows?
Yeah, absolutely. That's what I was gonna say. I was gonna say it'll be similar to No Man's Sky. It'll be similar to Skyrim. I mean, people played Skyrim and it was a buggy mess, and then eventually it was
What
playable.
do you what do you mean was? It still is a buggy mess.
I mean, true, but it's better than when it came out.
I mean, I literally log in and there's like a 50-50 chance my character dies instantly.
I mean, same, but in real life. Uh, I wake up, there's a 50-50 chance that that's not gonna happen.
I wake up and it's like, all right, time to flip a coin. Am I going to finally do it? Ah, won't be kissing the end of the shotgun today.
Won't be kissing in the shotgun today. All right. Well, Salsa, besides, taking the Kurt Cobain Express, why don't you phase us into our next topic?
All right, this one is a topic I am very passionate about. Something that needs to be said. For one, Watchdogs, whatever the new one's called, I forgot it already since it's kind of, failed. What was it called? Watchdogs Legion?
Yeah.
All right, so Watchdogs Legion. I was super excited for it. Turned out to be a bit of a flop, but you know what? I'm still going to end up buying it and playing it eventually. I'll probably still enjoy it.
So I'm pretty sure it's on sale right now.
Yeah, well, I'm poor right now, so I can't afford it.
You're like, I'm fucking poor.
Funny enough, still don't have that money from the government.
You're like, I'm waiting on Daddy Trump's stimulus check.
But Watch Dogs Legion, like or hate it, who cares? What I'm going to point out is in Watch Dogs 1, there is a hidden mission after doing all of the, what do you call them? Convoy missions. Where
Yeah.
basically you go up to a convoy and you have two options. You either kill everyone or you have to knock down the main guy and then escape. Either way, there's like 30 of them. It's really annoying to do all of them because if you fail, it resets you without your vehicle. So you have to steal a vehicle because you can't call a vehicle mid mission, which terrible game design. I still think they need to remake that game and just fix all the problems. But that aside, you get to the final mission after like 30 of them, and it's a Assassin's Creed Easter egg. You were sent to kill Olivier Garneau, who is
No.
like the CEO of Abstergo Entertainment, who literally appears in uh, Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag in the modern day section.
Okay.
He's your boss in that game, and at the halfway point of the game, he has to go to a conference in Chicago. You can even hack his emails and find some emails from who are the bad guys in Watch Dogs? I forget their name. They're like a security firm.
I was like, I have no idea.
I forget their name, but point is Bloom. That's it, Bloom. He has emails from Bloom talking about CTOS. and how they should incorporate it into Abstergo. So there's a clear connection right there that Abstergo Entertainment and Bloom exist in the same universe, which means canonically, based on that info in two separate games, that Assassin's Creed and Watchdogs take place in the same universe. Can you agree?
Me personally, yes. I know we've talked about this outside of this, but we watched the game theory, which I feel like is pretty damning evidence if you ask me.
So yeah, so you kill Olivier Garneau. You
Yep.
literally scan his body, and it says his name. I don't think it says his age because glitch in the system, but it says hunted by the Brotherhood. So undeniable proof they exist in the same universe. But I don't remember who it was that Ubisoft literally came out and said, no, that's just an Easter egg. There's no proof they're the same universe. Motherfucker, two games. Whatever. So we ignore it. We push past. I can't remember. I think it was Far Cry 4, where there was like another Easter egg that proves Abstergo exists in that universe as well. They're like, no. Just a coincidence. Forget about it. You saw nothing.
Forget about it.
And then I can't remember if there was an Easter egg or anything in Watch Dogs 2, but it doesn't matter. Watch Dogs Legion comes out. And already they're talking about the DLC they're going to be releasing. One of the DLC literally brings a character who is a member of the Brotherhood of Assassins. You get to play as someone who is an assassin. Is not definitive proof that these take place in the same universe.
I mean, it seems like it's definitive proof. So wait, why are they saying that they're not in the same universe now? I don't know if I missed you saying that, but why are they just all of a sudden saying, "Oh, nope, never mind."
No one can figure it out. They've said it multiple times, and it's always like, we're not ready to discuss that. And I think all it is Ubisoft, in their infinite wisdom, being like, oh, we don't want to tip our hands too much. Because at some point in the future, they're probably going to do a crossover game where, I don't know, Assassin's Creed spills over into other games. I mean, literally, you can dress up as an assassin in Ghost Recon Wildlands. The assassins are directly mentioned in Watch Dogs. Abstergo is mentioned in Far Cry. All the universes are clearly connected. They even, all the way back in, what game was that? It was like Ghost Recon Future Soldier or something. I don't know. There was an Abstergo bundle where you could dress like an assassin. It's been in the works for years, yet they continue to deny the existence of the connection. I don't think there's really much else for me to say there. That's literally the whole situation. There's clear evidence they're connected. Ubisoft refuses to admit it. I cannot figure out why. It would benefit them so much to just admit it at this point.
See, Salsa was he. I remember we've had this on the agenda for a while because I remember a couple of weeks ago you were wanting to talk about this and we just never got around to it. And then we started doing we started doing the whole streaming thing and everything else. So yeah, you've been wanting to talk about that for a while.
This has literally been on the docket all the way back in episode. It must have been episode 7, maybe. I mean, literally, when I found out about this news, which was back when Legion was first in the news, the game hadn't even come out yet, and I already had this information. That's how long it's been on the docket, and we just keep pushing it back. And I finally get to talk about it. Fuck Ubisoft.
Fuck Ubisoft.
I love you, Ubisoft, but you hurt me. So yeah, I guess we can skedaddle on into the next segment. Watchdogs Legion news. Wow, this is a little outdated now that I'm looking at it.
I was gonna say there's some stuff on there that's probably not relevant anymore.
Well, let's see. Verbatim, it says Watchdog Legion news, in parentheses, years late to neglected franchise, disregarding Promises of Permadeath. Now requires RTX 3080 to play Ultra settings. Announced DLC to bring back fan favorite Aiden Pierce, yada yada yada, wrench. Okay, so I'll just cover some of this quickly. Is there anything in this you don't already know?
I'm pretty sure. I'm pretty sure I know like most of everything. Just whatever you want to cover.
All right, so basically, Watch Dogs Legion should have come out years sooner. Watch Dogs was a good series. They kind of messed it up with 2, but it was still good enough that they shouldn't have made us wait this long.
Right.
Next point, disregarding promises of permadeath. When the game first came out, or before it came out, when they first announced it, they said you can play as anyone, but when that person you play as dies, they're gone forever. So you have to start as someone new.
Oh.
They threw that out. I think now it's only available in like some ultra hard difficulty. And even then, I'm not sure. Kind of weird, whatever. Requires the RTX 3080. I guess when the game first came out and they ran it on like top tier builds, it was still not running at 60 FPS on the RTX 3080, which at
Jesus
the
Christ.
time was like cutting edge technology for computers.
They're just like, you need a fucking quantum supercomputer to get this to max settings.
Which is insane to think because the game looks good, don't get me wrong.
Right.
But how the fuck do you make a game so poorly optimized that using top of the line computer technology, it still runs like Minecraft?
The size of these blocks are absolutely insane.
Yo, these 24 pixels do be looking fresh though. Alright,
That's
so
funny.
announced
Actually,
DLC.
or go ahead. Go ahead. Sorry, I have something to talk about after you're done, but go ahead.
Okay. So announced DLC. They announced that they were going to bring in some DLC, which would bring in 4 new characters with 4 new, I don't know, storylines. I don't know. It would bring back Aiden Pierce, which, in my opinion, best character so far. A lot of people didn't like him because he was kind of a generic protagonist from an action movie, but I thought he was cool. Wrench, side character from the second game, he was pretty cool. Don't know how he ties in or any of them tie into the game, but also added an Assassin's Creed Brotherhood character, some new woman assassin. I don't know. I've yet to read anything about it other than that. And then obviously, I guess the fourth character they were bringing in has psychic powers.
Oh, for the Watchdog game?
Yeah, kind of threw me for a loop too.
I was gonna say I don't know why that would be necessary, but pop off.
So yeah, I don't. Ubisoft is just going hard in the paint right now. Crazy ideas, throwing it at the wall, just seeing what sticks. Um, and I guess I'll throw in the next point too, since it's also pretty quick. Aiden Pierce, Wrench, and all the other DLC characters are playable in the story mode, which is pretty cool. That at any point you can just grab them and play as them throughout the entire story. Uh, Pretty much that's what I was going to do if I ever got the game. Was immediately play as Aiden Pierce because why would I need anyone else? To be honest.
Why would I need anyone else?
Available offline play. I don't know what that means anymore. I wrote that so long ago. And then obviously the apparently potential for free post-launch content, and eventually they talked about adding crossplay at a later date. I wasn't even aware the game had multiplayer, so that's interesting. I guess that's where I'm gonna end
Wild.
on all that. This is all stuff I read months ago that I've forgotten about, so it
That's
do be
fair.
like that.
Hey, at least we can mark it off that we talked about it. I'll say that way it can be removed from the list until we need to reference back to it eventually.
Man,
Um,
that means I'm gonna have to start writing new shit.
exactly. But no, something that we've talked about on the podcast before, and that we've also talked about outside of the podcast. Excuse me. Is Last of Us 2.
Oh no.
And so I actually got The Last of Us 2 as an early Christmas present from someone, and I started playing it. And I'm going to be real honest. Like I've played it so far. Like I would say I'm about 2.5 out of 5 ways out of the game. So like I'm almost to like I take that back. Like I'm like one and a third of the way through the game. Like I'm almost to the halfway point. And really, up to this point, the game has been nothing but amazing. I mean, really, it's been just super great. I mean, the visuals are great. The story's sad, but it's really good. I mean, it follows the first game's story pretty well. Like, I don't know why everybody is complaining.
It's a lot to talk about because obviously a lot of people were a little peeved that they killed Joel off in such an unceremonious way. It was needlessly brutal and it made no sense story wise. Because, yes, what he did by lying to Ellie was not a good thing. But if you're looking at factually what's the more right thing to do, he made the right choice by taking her away from the Fireflies.
Right.
Because the Fireflies, they were going to cut out her brain to try and make a vaccine. Which, by the way, that's not how that works. There's no such thing as a vaccine for a fungal infection.
Well, I guess that the vaccine could have been some kind of not necessarily. There isn't a vaccine, but there is a cure. There are cures to fungal infections or preventatives, if you will, for certain fungal infections, especially like ones that obviously in this case,
There
this
are
is
antifungal medications.
right.
There are
Obviously, or go ahead.
there are ways to treat cordyceps, but
Well,
the problem is in the game they very specifically make it known that what they want is a vaccine, a way to make people immune, which is not possible. Even right now, we do not have a vaccine for any fungal infections in the real world.
but see, that's the thing is that first and foremost, cordyceps in real life, it's nothing like the ones in the game. Okay, cordyceps in real life are very small fungal infections that only occur typically in bugs, ants usually. Typically, humans don't get impacted by cordyceps because cordyceps isn't strong enough to actually affect humans. So the premise of the game isn't that the cordyceps just so suddenly started. I've actually watched some videos about this, and fun fact, I also did my AP Bio final in high school about this as well. So cordyceps by themselves can't infect humans. It would have to mix a back. It basically, it would the fungal format would have to evolve and acclimate to a viral form in order for it to affect anyone in the way it's affecting people in the game. And so you are correct that cordyceps is a fungus. However, in the format in which the game exists, there would have to be biological evolution to make it possible for it to infect people. So, while yes, it's not necessarily realistic, if given the scenario and the right circumstances, there could be a cure because the fungus would have to take a viral format in which to infect us.
That's not true at all, though.
But
In the
that's
game, they specifically say that it's just a mutated form of cordyceps. At no point do they say at all it's mutated and combined with another disease. So it's still, by all rights, just a fungus, a fungal infection. And there's no way to vaccinate for a fungal infection. You can make the argument that, I don't know, maybe using her blood, they could create an antifungal medication to help stave off infection, but not prevent it. That's my biggest point is by cutting out her brain, they would be killing any chance of developing a medication to prevent full-blown infection. Her blood is infinitely more valuable based on, well,
So
even modern day research into antifungal.
So it says right here that there are several candidates that are in preclinical stage and development, and 2 vaccines against possible fungal infections. So
Yes,
there,
as of right now,
so there are,
in the
there
year
are,
2020.
but that's the thing is that it's always possible. Okay, there's no such thing as you can't. Like what I'm saying is that the idea of a vaccine for a fungal infection has existed for years. Like that was also part of my research is that people have looked for vaccinations for fungal infections for decades because just because it's prevalent in the media now doesn't mean that this hasn't existed from prior to that prevalence.
The concept of a vaccine for a fungal infection, yes, there's been an idea about it for years, but there's literally, like you mentioned earlier, a game theory video where he talks about in 2013 when the game takes place, there was no evidence it could exist. In fact, even in the game, they don't even have people who are able to create a vaccine. They're working out of a bombed out hospital. The guy who's going to perform surgery isn't even very qualified for brain surgery.
So irregardless of that, the point is that
Regardless, not irregardless.
well, irregardless is technically the same as regardless. They're both valid words. Irregardless, the point that I'm making is that the concept of a vaccination for a fungal infection has worked for years. And the game has never stated that it's trying to be 100% realistic. Never once has anybody ever said that. The game is a matter of fiction. All right. In the game, in this universe, there exists somebody who says that there is the possibility of a vaccine cure to cordyceps if they're able to examine Ellie's brain and to go from that point. Because what they've determined is that how cordyceps affects the human body is it attacks the brain. So if they can examine her brain to determine, hey, this is what her brain did, or this is what her body did to prevent her from being infected, then maybe they can do something with other people. So while yes, I agree that it is not very realistic, you are correct. No one said it was. However, if we were to translate it into terms inside the game, then with all intents and purposes, if they needed to examine her brain to see how the cordyceps was affecting her, then I guess what they were doing would technically be one way of doing it. And I agree as well that the individual in the game who is performing the surgery was not qualified. They even talk about the fact that the guy who's doing the surgery is like, I think he's an immunologist, I think, who has
Well,
very
hold on.
little. Go ahead.
Let me interject real quick and say that to say that the game does not heavily center itself in a realistic depiction of an apocalypse would be an outright fabrication. The game heavily prides itself in realism. The fact that you're living
But
in a world with minimal resources, bullets are hard to come by, even makeshift shanks that you use to kill people only last a couple stabs because realistically, duct tape and a pair of scissors aren't going to last that many times. The
so
game is
yes,
heavily based in reality, so much so that you would be hard pressed to say that anything other than the infection and even the cure are the most fantastical elements about the game.
but that's what I'm saying is that at this juncture, like you said, the game is has very realistic concepts,
The whole
but
game itself is a piece of fiction set in a realistic environment.
okay, but realistically, cordyceps isn't going to actually infect people. Cordyceps has never been able to infect humans. All right.
As of yet, no. That's why they say it is a mutated form of it.
Exactly. So fiction, they can work that itself gives them creative license. So it's hard for people to
You
because what
cannot say a game has creative freedom to do whatever they want, and the game is a work of fiction and should not be taken seriously, but also say that it is a realistic work of fiction based in reality.
But that's exactly what it is, because what you're doing is you're doing, it's called whataboutism. You're running in circles trying
No,
to.
whataboutism is saying, yeah, there's that, but what about this? No,
That
I'm
is what you're doing.
saying the game, no. Being whataboutism would be like saying, oh, you're saying it's unrealistic because of this, but what about this unrealistic aspect? No, what I'm talking about is the fact that The Last of Us, nothing in it is unrealistic except for the infection. And even then, it's not even that unrealistic. It is possible. If you watch that game theory, they talk about how realistic the infection is. It would not take that much effort for the cordyceps to become a human born infection.
So again, it comes back to the game uses realistic concepts for the gameplay and the survival aspect. Because you could, in theory, remove the entire concept of cordyceps and just talk about the downfall of civilization, and the game would still be realistic. That's
The
the issue.
problem is, you're trying to make the argument that because the game has a 1% unrealistic component compared to a 99% realistic component, the whole thing should be taken as unrealistic and not be held to realistic standards.
1 second.
You had your second. Oh man. All right. Well, you do whatever it is you're doing. I'm
Sorry,
just gonna.
1 second. I'm almost done. Anyways, no. So what I'm saying is that you there's only I've never even really brought up the realistic nature of it, because all I'm saying is that we cannot use, because what's happening is that you're trying to dismiss the possibility of Ellie's brain needing to be examined for possible treatments and cures by saying that the game is realistic, but that I'm trying to say that it's not realistic in aspects, which is not what I'm doing. All I'm saying is that in reality, if you put yourself into a situation where you're reviewing somebody for a fungal infection, you're trying to see how it is affecting them, and with what we know about cordyceps and ants specifically, is it attacks the ant's brain and it takes over the ant's brain, and cordyceps as a fungus operates on like a hive mentality. So it's a similar format in the game, is that the cordyceps operates in somewhat of a hive mentality, because especially in the second game, they talk a lot about hordes and situations like that. Like for instance, in the game, the hordes of they're called runners or clickers. They migrate based on migration patterns because of the cordyceps. So in the winter, they're migrating out of the area, and then in the summer they come back and all this other stuff. It's a whole thing in the game, but that's not really important. Basically, what I'm saying is that in real life, cordyceps affects the brain, so it's not unrealistic for a doctor and an immunologist or whatever the hell that guy was, for him to say, look, in order for us to try and understand this, we need to understand how her brain did not get taken over by the cordyceps. So it wouldn't be outside the realm of possibility that they would be like, okay, so let's cut into her brain. And obviously, when you're in the apocalypse, that's not going to end well. Even if you had the best of the best machinery, you're in the apocalypse. Like you said, the person wasn't qualified to be doing it, but that was the best that they had.
Let me counter that though. In any case in which you are trying to discover the proper antibodies to vaccinate people with, you would have more. Well, I'm just going to outright say it. You cut into her brain, you kill her. she's no longer producing antibodies that you can replicate and study. Then you only have the limited amount of blood in her body to figure out what makes it tick. Whereas if you keep her alive and keep taking blood samples, you can reverse engineer a vaccine through that method. That is assuming you can make a vaccine for a fungus in a world in which 2013 technology is pretty much the standard and will not progress beyond that.
But even then, that's not the standard, because technically the game takes place in a different time period. Also, it's you could call into question, if you really want to get into semantics, you could call into question as to whether or not they're existing in our timeline, or is it a different timeline where technology is already advanced. Like, obviously, I understand that that's sort of a moot point.
Actually, they proved it takes place in our timeline based on I forget what it was. Basically, a song appears and Joel points it out, and it proves that it takes place in our timeline.
But even then, it's you. I feel like you could still make a convincing argument to say that, okay, well, it's possible that in that timeline that band still exists. I mean, for instance, if you look at any popularized version of different universes or different timelines, there are extreme similarities through a lot of them. If you even use the string theory or the multi-universe theory,
then you're running into the problem of you're not operating under Occam's razor, which is the simplest solution is it's our universe, but at this point in time, this event happened, which changed the future.
But again, I feel like Occam's razor is only applicable in a situation where there is a clear answer, but there's not. It's not clear.
No,
answer.
Occam's razor simply says that the most likely answer is likely the correct one. It doesn't need to be a clear answer, just the most likely.
But
the one that requires
then,
the least amount of explaining.
But even then, that doesn't mean it is the right answer. It's just saying that in a situation in which there are multiple answers, it is usually best to go with the most likely one. Again, there's a whole conversation you could have. But regardless, it still is a conversation to be said that yes, The Last of Us takes place in 2013. The beginning of the game takes place in 2013. The end of basically after the beginning, where you have the flashback where Joel's daughter dies, there's a 20-year time gap. Okay, if there is a 20-year time gap, it is not it is not outside of the realm of possibility that there were scientists that were trying to find a cure.
Well, let me ask you this. During the Dark Ages, when the bubonic plague wiped out, what was it, like almost half of Europe?
Sure.
Do you think that many people dying in rapid succession slowed the progress of technology?
I mean, of course. But irregardless.
Because in The Last of Us, in the course of several months in 2013, 60% of humanity died. Which means by the time 20 years later happened, well over 80% would be dead.
I mean,
which means that technology would have basically halted.
That's fine. But if you think about it, you could, in theory, use 2013 technology to potentially formulate something different. Like, it's not outside of the realm of possibility that, using the technology from that time that you couldn't. And logically speaking, again, this is drawing a lot of conclusions off of our current context. In a situation in which an apocalypse of this nature would occur, our leading scientists, immunologists, and everything else would be the first people to be protected, not only by the government, but by entities such as the Fireflies. It's almost commonplace that in situations where apocalyptic level events, either in modern media or in real life, they save people who are important. So it's not outside the realm of possibility that they saved all the important people, put them into protective custody, and then they started working on a vaccine. That realistically is what would happen. I mean, that's
while theoretically that would be possible. The problem with that line of thinking is that in the course of several months, 60% of humanity dies, which means infrastructure is gone. There's no more internets, no more phones. The only thing you have left is satellites. And even then, not all of them are going to work because you have to have the proper means to access said satellites, which means the information that you need to hand off to other people. Because right now, people who are developing things like new vaccines, they have years worth of back information they can research using the internet, research papers they can access by email. They no longer have that. They have to work from scratch with what information they have on hand. So it would slow that aspect. But you also have to take into
slow, but you're not taking in consideration that there is a 20-year time frame where they have the.
Which brings me to my next point that theoretically, yes, monkeys with typewriters, eventually, given enough time, enough monkeys with enough typewriters will write the entirety of Shakespeare's works. And theoretically, with enough time, enough doctors with enough information they can scrounge up in an apocalypse could theoretically develop the means to develop a cure, a vaccine for a fungus. Hypothetically, it's possible. Very unrealistic and not likely, but possible.
But irregardless, that's again, it's still possible. You're acting as if it's never happened before, but it has happened. These types of things, while not commonplace, working in the most extreme of conditions, they can still happen. So what I'm trying to
you're taking a hypothetical scenario which has never happened before and comparing it to realistic standards. It's one thing to say that the cure for tuberculosis, for example, yeah, it came about in a rough time in which information was not readily available, but they didn't have the problem of literal zombies preventing them from moving to point A to point B to gather the information they needed. Back then, they could still send mail from point A to point B to acquire information that would help them develop the cure.
So again, it comes back to how we understand cordyceps works and how somebody would have to work, because ultimately again, it's hypothetical. Even your opposition to what I'm saying is hypothetical. I mean, again, like there's not, honestly, in this case, if you want to delve it back down to Occam's razor, the simplest answer is usually the solution. The simplest answer to the solution is cordyceps affects the brains, and in the continuity of Last of Us, again, it affects the brain. It's very clear that it affects the brain, and all science and research in the game indicates that it affects the brain. So,
I mean, there's not really much Occam's razor about that. That's just explaining how cordyceps works.
Exactly. So then it would not be outside the realm of possibility that, very much so, we need to examine a immune person's brain to see how they are, how they are fighting the cordyceps. That's definitely something that is a step that somebody would take.
Well, hold on. Let's take a step back. It's 2013. A new form of cordyceps pops up, and you, as a hypothetical brain surgeon, even an immunologist, let's assume you somehow are both a brain surgeon and an immunologist. Unlikely, but possible. You would not have the information on hand to figure out. You might not even know what cordyceps is because it's not common knowledge. It's not something you're trained for. That's only the kind of thing you would know if you were I hate to say fungologist. I'm sure there's a more proper term for people who study fungi.
But if I may step in, again, Occam's razor. If you just simply view the character models of any of the infected, what is the most impacted part of their body? The head. The
Again,
clickers.
yes, it's the head. I'm not debating that. I'm talking about how likely is it that a doctor, now cut off from any and all information about cordyceps, would be able to properly diagnose and cure cordyceps let alone a mutated strain of it.
Okay, so like you said, a new strain pops up, and I'm
Not to
just
mention
you.
they didn't know it was cordyceps until after over 60% of humanity was killed.
Well, I don't know about that. I'm pretty sure let me look up the timeline.
I'll say I'm looking at it right now. It says 2013, 60% of humanity was killed in several months. Later, medically referred to as cordyceps brain infection, which means they did not medically determine it as cordyceps until after that event.
Okay, that's fine. A few months after the 2013 events of the 2013, so they knew it was cordyceps, most likely before 2014. So we can round up and say by 2014 they knew that it was cordyceps. Okay.
Hypothetically, yes.
Okay. So
Though
again,
I will say, hold on, because it says late September is when it first reached America. Several months later, several could be anything from 4 to like 11. So hypothetically, 2014, it's optimistic, but just for the case of realism, let's say 2015.
okay, so 2015. So we already have existing research about cordyceps. It's in books. It's in a lot of textbooks. Any basic biology textbook, when you talk about fungus, you talk about cordyceps. All right. I've known
You have to determine basic, though. My textbooks from high school didn't have anything about cordyceps.
mine did. I literally took so my sophomore year when I went to my biology class, we talked about all the different biomes, all the different types of life, right? Because fungus is its own, it's fungi is its own group, right? So when we talked about fungi, we talked about with the textbook, of course, we talked about cordyceps because they have those. I remember 100%. I remember because I remember they had pictures of ants standing on top of like grass stems or whatever, jump like and their heads exploding because that's what happens with cordyceps. Cordyceps will infect the ant. The ant goes up to a high place, and the cordyceps bursts the ant's head so that way it can spread its spores. Right. So that was in my sophomore biology class, and if I knew that in an Indiana high school class, then I would venture to guess elsewhere they also knew it.
Hold on. I'm not saying we didn't learn it in high school. I'm saying that it was not in the textbook. For me, we had to learn it through a video online. It was not talked about in our textbooks at all.
But I'm telling you, it was in my textbook. Like I just told you, there was a picture in my textbook about cordyceps. When
And
we
the
got
problem there is that's what we call circumstantial evidence. What do you call it? There's a proper definition, a word that means I'm taking this information based on the accounts of people and not on the empirical data.
so even then, so let's say we know because we know it's cordyceps, right? By 2015, we know it's cordyceps. Okay,
Well, some people know it's cordyceps. By then, internet no longer exists, phone lines no longer work.
but but word of mouth still exists, and as evident in the first game, the government also still exists because the government is controlling QZ zones. So the government is spreading this information. That that's
Yes,
that's
they are
apparent,
spreading it to people who, work within the government's confines. By
right?
that point, many people no longer operate within the government's area.
But Joel, a smuggler, knows of this. He knows what cordyceps is. Ellie obviously is a very unique circumstance, but she knows about it because she's obviously immune to it. So,
Yes, and she was raised within a government militarized zone.
so, so at least the majority of the remaining civilized populations are
Knows
in these QZ
that it's
zones,
a form of cordyceps.
right? And
That's not entirely true. The games kind of discuss that while, yes, people do live within the government militarized zones, it's not really clear whether or not it's a majority.
but even then, it would have to be at least a slight majority, at
We
least a slight
can
majority.
we can only safely assume that half. Any more
then,
than that, and it is entirely hypothetical.
okay, but even then, the people who need to know is what I'm saying. Again,
Most likely, yes.
it circles back to the people who need to know, such as scientists and doctors. They know what this is, right? Period. Like, I'm sorry, but there's no way around it. If I would honestly, if you think about it, if a doctor, they would be probably like kidnapping doctors at this point and like making them do research. That's what the Fireflies did. They were kidnapping medical professionals to do the research so that way they could do the shit to Ellie, because the Fireflies knew for some time that Ellie was immune, and that's why they were so prepared when they got there. Obviously, when I say prepared, I mean prepared as much as one could be in the post-apocalyptic United States / Seattle, um, or wherever the hell they were. I don't remember. Was it Washington or something? I don't know. The new game's in Washington, but I don't remember where this takes place. So, irregardless, it goes back to the people who need to know that it's cordyceps know it's cordyceps. And one of the most basic understandings of cordyceps is the example of the ant. All right, that was in my textbook. You're right. That may be circumstantial, but my fiance, my wife, is a biology major. The textbooks that are used in college are typically the same textbooks, regardless of where you're at. So any college individual who is pre-med, you have to take biology, and not just human biology. You have to take animal. No, you specifically have to take an ant biology class, but you have to take a biology class, and I'm going to say any credible biology teacher is going to teach you about all of the different forms of life. They're not just going to talk about humans. And
Then
cordyceps
in
is
this,
part of that.
then in this situation, you can ask her, how much does she know about cordyceps? In as much as, does she know enough that she would be able to start working on a vaccine towards it?
But that's the thing, is
Or does
that
she just know about the basics of cordyceps?
okay, but that's the thing, is that I'm not saying that anybody that she knows. What I'm saying is that from a very
Doctors,
basic,
theoretically, yes, they would know what cordyceps is based on, at some point in their life, having learned what cordyceps is.
okay, right.
Assuming they got their education after the point in time in which it became relevant to teach them what cordyceps is.
You have to learn about fungus. All right, fungus is part of
Yes,
biology,
but
and is
cordyceps, the
is
ant
a
kind that we're familiar with, wasn't always in textbooks. That's what I'm saying.
in the 20, at least in the 21st century, in the 20th century, it is. At least as far as I can tell, cordyceps has been studied for decades easily. So because they use it as a homeopathic remedy for like headaches, people ingest cordyceps. The which I would never do, but people ingest cordyceps as a natural remedy to like headaches and like inflammation and stuff like that. But what I'm saying is that even from a very basic understanding of cordyceps, you would know that it affects the brain. All right. Even if you had no idea what cordyceps does, if you're looking at a clicker body, you're going to know that, wow, it's really affecting that motherfucker's brain because that motherfucker looks like a scab. All right. So it's not outside the realm of possibility that someone's going to take and make the assumption that, okay, well, maybe we need to dissect the brain to kind of see how the fungus affects the brain. Like, I don't feel like that's that outrageous to think, because on a basic visual observation, it's very clear that the cordyceps is attacking the brain.
Yes, it is clear that it attacks the brain, but it goes to show that if a doctor does not have the knowledge of how to accurately make a vaccine, going right to the brain is the worst possible solution. You kill the patient, and you no longer have a means to gather antibodies from the body.
But regardless, but fungus doesn't work on a basis of antibodies. Fungus works on a basis of
That's how
spores.
vaccines work.
But
Vaccines, you have to have antibodies created using the vaccine to ward off future infection. They want to make a vaccine. They say it in the games multiple times. While
so
yes, that's not how fungus works, we are operating under this fictional world in which you can make a vaccine with 2013 technology for a fungus.
So honestly, it's kind of a moot point anyways. Because if you really think about it, and here's what I'm going to say, because I think that we've talked about this for long enough. Because regardless of everything else, I still stand by that science goes to prove that yes, while it is maybe not realistic that a vaccine could be created, if you are living in a post-apocalyptic world and your only empirical evidence at this point is the last 20 years, the last 2 decades of people being mauled to death by these horrific creatures, your only knowledge is that, look, we know what cordyceps is to the extent that we know it's a bacteria, we know it's a fungus. This fungus attacks the brain, it works in a hive mind, and everything else. You're going to want to dissect the brain because you need to know how it's affecting the brain so that way you can develop a cure. But that being said, I've played the second game, and the cure is irrelevant, truthfully. The Fireflies knew it probably wouldn't work, but it was a last-ditch effort because humanity and civilization is essentially at its core broken. So the vaccine was irrelevant. The Fireflies were really just attempting any last-ditch effort they could to salvage what was remaining. And it's very clear that that everything is irrelevant because, playing the first game, I went back and played part of the first game, and I've played the first game, and I've played the second game. But honestly, the dark truth of The Last of Us is that there is no cure. Okay, there probably wasn't a cure to begin with. Ellie's brain and her blood probably would not have produced a cure, no matter how much science or how much time they had. And that is what I was trying to get to, is that it's honestly morbid and dark because you spend The Last of Us 2, because like you said, you read a spoiler that Joel got killed. You spend The Last of Us 2 as
Everyone knows it at this point.
Right. But in The Last
It
of
was
Us
literally
2,
a meme.
true. But in The Last of Us 2, you're Ellie, and you're basically hunting down all the people that killed or part of the killing of Joel. And even where I'm at in this game, you go into Seattle and you're in what's called WLF. It's the Washington Liberation Front. That's the group that they're basically the people that killed Joel were part of the WLF. The WLF are similar to the Fireflies, as they're like a rogue faction. Um, and the government, it's called Fedra. So basically, the WLF, pushed Fedra out. They basically pushed the entirety of the government out of the area. And basically, you're playing as Ellie, and you're going in here, and you're just fucking killing people. Like, I mean, and it's almost unavoidable. Like, you have to kill these people. And I've easily, in this game, I've killed like 60 to 80 people, and I'm not even halfway through the game. So you're thinking that you're playing as Ellie. There's no cure for this, and at the rate in which people are dying, not only from man-made conflict, but at the rate people are dying from the plague that has beset the world, you know what I mean? Like, you're basically dwindling your numbers even more because there is no cure, right? If you get bit, you get bit. I mean, that's just it.
I get all that. The only reason I brought up the fact that the cure, the vaccine was unrealistic, is because it proves that what Joel did in the first game was the right choice.
Oh,
and
yeah, I agree.
Even if that being the right choice makes the story better because it follows a well-founded story structure in that Joel goes on a journey with a daughter-like figure, and at the end of the game has to make a hard, heroic choice. Whereas the second game doesn't have that. The second game has a very broken sense of storytelling in that you play the first half of the game as Ellie, and then you play the second half of the game, which takes place during the first half of the game, as whatever her name is, which is terrible. You should never have two separate rise, climaxes, and falls. It should be one rise, one climax, one fall, and just go back and forth telling the story from different perspectives. That's one thing. But also, one of the biggest complaints I have about the game, which I don't know if you've reached far enough in the game to realize it yet, but The Last of Us 2 tries to tell a story about revenge. But it flops in the sense that in the process of trying to say that revenge is bad and helps no one, it defeats its own purpose by having both characters get revenge on multiple people only to become hypocrites in the end.
But I mean, isn't hypocrisy going? I mean, that's just honestly, it's the issue is that I mean, regardless of anything else, I mean, it's basically just it is what it is at this point. I mean, you have to think about how low that these people are in this game because I've not reached any major conclusion outside of the fact that I'm playing as Ellie and I'm hunting down the people. Like the only person that I've killed to this point that was from the original group was a girl named Nora. But I don't know. The Last of Us 2 is not bad. I think people are honestly just too finicky, and I think that the people need to give it a break.
All I'm gonna say is I see why people gave it so much shit. And while I don't care personally, I think if you want to like a game, that's up to you. I personally don't like it because I think it shirks too many storytelling. I don't know the best way to phrase it, but it tells a bad story. It focuses too, and it tries way too hard at being a story about darkness and sadness. So much so that Neil Druckmann himself literally said, we don't allow anyone to use the word fun when describing this game. A game, I don't know. If a game's not fun, then it's not worth playing. Simple as that.
Don't get me wrong, like that's wrong. Um, but at the same time, I think that I mean the game is fun. I mean, I would say that it's fun. I mean, it's honestly, I think that again, people just get really butthurt when people say things, and I feel like they're just. I feel like if people were just to ignore all the sound outside of the game itself, and if they were to play the game and just be like, yeah, this is actually pretty fun, and just accept that the game itself is literally just a game, and not judge the game based on the words of the creators, I feel like we would all get along better because it's just a fucking game, dude. It's a fun game. It really is. I'm being real with you. Like, there's nothing not fun about the game, no matter what Neil Druckmann said. It's a fun game. So that's what I'm saying is that people focus too much on the honestly on the bullshit, and they're not playing the game to have fun. They're playing the game to try and have an opinion about the creators, and this is kind of what I'm deriving from what you're saying.
I'll go back and at some point I will play the game. Because right now, everything I know about the game is based on reviews, video essays, gameplay, walkthroughs, and all that. And at some point I will play the game. But from where I am now, the game looks like The Last of Us 1, same engine basically, except for they added crawling.
Yeah, I mean it plays very similarly, yes, which isn't a bad thing. And I wouldn't say that it playing similarly to the first game is at all a bad thing. If anything, it's a good thing
I
because
don't know, man. The first game handled like shit.
okay, let me preface that by saying it handles similarly in regards to the mechanics, but in terms of smoothness and in terms of like functionality, it is much better. It's like if they made the first one the right way.
We'll see. All I'm saying is Naughty Dog, they have a history of making games that handle like shit. Uncharted 1 handled terribly. Uncharted 2 was better. I've started playing 3, and so far it handles a lot better. But somehow they lost all that when they made The Last of Us 1. Instead, they go back to, all right, here's a shitty shooting mechanic that doesn't work half the time. Uh, there's a lot to go over. I'm just not even going to get into it. I'll play
Like
the
I
game.
said, like I said, this the second one. Honestly, that's why I was going to say is that I don't know why people are complaining about it because the second one, for all intents and purposes, it does better on what the first game didn't do better on. You know, the first game, like you said, the shooting mechanics weren't great. A lot of the movement and whatnot wasn't the best. But in this game, they fix a lot of that, which is why I have a hard time understanding why people are like so pissed about it. Because truthfully, the game is leaps and bounds better than the first one. But I feel like everybody gets really worked up about the story and
I
not
mean,
even
story is a pretty important aspect.
but the
Like,
story's not even that bad. Like I said, I mean, it's not bad. It's honestly, it's very realistic. Like, what if you think about it? Like, Ellie is pissed off at Joel, yes, but she's getting revenge on the people who killed Joel. So she even accepts, in some degree, that what Joel did was the right thing.
all I'm going to say is you can play through the game and maybe you don't think the story's that bad, but in some people's eyes, it's better to have an absolute storm of a story than it is to have a lukewarm, tepid story. Because a lukewarm, meeker story just goes to show either not enough effort was put in or too much effort was put in to make the game unenjoyable. And I'll give it a shot.
Like, and that's fine. I'm not saying that anybody's wrong per se, because for all I know, the second half of the game could be shit. But I mean, literally, I've played through, I would say probably 40% of the game at this point, and there's nothing. I don't know what you mean by lukewarm shit. Like, it's good. Like, I don't know. Like I said, I'll play through it, and maybe once I beat the game, I can come back and kind of give an additional opinion about it. But at least right now, it's nothing but good.
I respect your opinion. I have my own opinions. It is what it is.
And no offense, but I again, I don't take opinions from reviews. It's one thing to play the game and be like, look, I played the game through, I gave it a shot. It's garbage, absolute bullshit. But sometimes people will be like, yeah, I watched a couple gameplay videos and this person said, my favorite YouTuber said that this isn't fun. Not to say that that's, any issue with what you're saying, but, generally speaking, the same thing.
Yeah, no, I typically avoid watching videos of my favorite YouTubers playing the game. I've only watched, well, straight playthroughs in which there isn't really commentary. Um, the video essay, obviously. Guy kind of talks about, from a writer's perspective, what's wrong with the story and how he would change it personally. And he makes some good points about how the game itself, it's a rote story about revenge, which fails in the second half. It is what it is. Obviously, at some point, I will play the game to further increase my understanding of the game. But from what I've seen so far, I do not predict my opinion will change that much. Maybe the gameplay will be enough to make my opinion improve a little bit, but the story itself, I do not think will change based on second or first hand experience.
Well, I guess, like I said, you just need to play it, really. That's what that would be my recommendation. Just play the game, make your own conclusions. Don't listen to anything that anybody else has to say. Make the conclusion for yourself. I mean, that's my big thing, because I feel like so many people out there only listen to what other people say, and
Well,
they go ahead.
it's important, and you can't say don't listen to anyone else, because you should listen to other people and take their opinions into account. But you shouldn't base your opinions solely on the opinions of others. That's why I went out of my way to not just listen to opinion pieces, but to just watch the game from start to finish with no opinion, just to see how the game plays and how the story plays out.
That's all fine and dandy, but at the end of the day, I still believe that to truly have an opinion or a true fleshed out thought process about something, you need to try it. Like, it, for instance, like, I wouldn't sit here and tell you, like, look, I've never played an Assassin's Creed game before in my life, but it's obviously just a joke. But David Dobrik said that Assassin's Creed is dog shit, and then after I watched that video, I watched a couple of other videos of people playing the game, as well as a couple of video essays, and they essentially all come to the same conclusion. So I'm never gonna play it. That's what I'm saying.
I agree that you should not say this game's bad because these people said so. That's why I encourage people to go out of their way to either try it or, if they can't, experience the game in the second most pure way, which is a playthrough with no commentary. Like Assassin's Creed, I could go through and explain the problem with every one of those games while still being a fan. And that's the important thing is, I liked the first The Last of Us, and maybe I'll like the second The Last of Us. But I'm not going to lie and say that it does not have huge flaws in the story. Even after I play it, I'm still gonna look at those flaws and be like, hey, it's a little fucked up. It is what it is.
Yeah, but again, I think it boils down to is that there's a very large negative preconception about the game in the media, and it's definitely pervaded into all forms of media, which creates an issue where it's like a what's the phrase that people use, where a sound room or
An echo chamber?
it becomes an echo chamber. You hear all the same stuff, and it comes back to you, and you think the same things that you heard to begin with. And obviously, I'm not saying that Salsa is doing that, because I like to think that Salsa has a little bit of more of an open mindedness to things like this. But I
Well,
definitely
yeah, I
feel
mean,
like,
I'm actually open to playing the game. That's more than he can say about a lot of people.
right, and that's what I'm saying is that a lot of people probably hear the worst, and then they just say, "Yep, nope, not gonna play. Bye." You know what I mean? And that's where I take issue is that people basically surround themselves with this media, and then it just turns into an echo chamber where nothing gets done.
I always say the best place to get an honest opinion is, I don't know if you've ever heard of him, Moist Critical.
I'm not familiar with him.
He goes by Penguins Zero YouTube, and he does basically nowadays all he does is videos of him throwing dildos at walls and dumb shit, Yu-Gi-Oh unboxings, and game reviews. His game
Very
reviews
nice.
are very enlightening because he has no reason to lie and say a game is right bad. And he even said, The Last of Us, it handles better than the first game. And while the story has problems, it's still a semi enjoyable experience. I respect that. I think he's speaking from the perspective of a man who has nothing to gain from lying about how the game plays.
Right, and that's fair. I mean, not to say that anybody would have an agenda per se, but
Because, like,
I don't.
I love Watchmen, not Watchmen, Watchdogs.
Right.
He absolutely shit on Watchdogs Legion, and I don't fully agree with him. I'm gonna play the game to find out if what he's saying is true, but I respect his opinion. I'm not going to say the game is bad because of what he said, and that's the takeaway. Make your own opinions based on experience. If you can't experience it firsthand, then find the next best way without muddying your experience with other people's opinions.
That's fair. But anyways, uh, I feel like I said we've been going for like a little over an hour and a half almost, so probably should call it there. Here's what we'll do. I'm going to go ahead and give us all the ads and everything else for whatnot, and kind of go from there. But follow us on Twitter. The Geeks, it's a geek_stew. Facebook is facebook.com/try the stew, or you can just search at try the stew in your search bar, or you can follow Salsa on Twitter at Salsa Shark Jr. And I am on Twitter at Pint Size Beast. But me and Salsa had a pretty interesting conversation today, kind of about the realistic nature of cordyceps and the Last of Us games, and also just the dark morbidness that is that there is no cure, and basically they were just going to kill Ellie just to try and salvage humanity, but not going to work. Which is, I feel like that's a whole conversation just in general for another day. In fact, I might even do a video about that sometime because that's just a very interesting concept. Anyways, that being said, what was I going to say? Oh, yeah, honestly, I don't have anything else unless you have anything also.
No, I ain't got nothing. All I've got is I am hungry. I'm gonna go eat.
You do that. All right, folks. See you guys next time. Stay happy, stay safe, stay healthy, and Salsa close us out.
Oh shit! I forgot what I'm supposed to say. Open up my Twitter real quick so I can remember what my new catchphrase is. Oh yeah. See you there, Space Cowboy.